Alongside Blair Angulo, I am Emily Proud. Welcome into the College Football Recruiting Show. We appreciate you watching us live here on a Monday. A reminder to hit that like button. Make sure that you are subscribed and listen up because I'm about to tell you what's on tap. We got a loaded show today. We're going to go around the country to get the latest recruiting intel as we wrap up a busy weekend of decisions. Plus, we'll take a little bit of a longer layover in Miami, check in on the Canes recruiting, and finally, we're going to run through some underachievers on the recruiting trail and tell you if it's panic or patience. But first, let's hit some headlines. You watched it go down live right here on #CommitHQ. The #1 offensive tackle in the class, David Sanders Jr., committing to Tennessee. Here's Ryan Callahan from GoVols 24/7 for more on the Vols' big win.
This is a massive pickup for Tennessee, and I think kind of a statement win for the Vols because of who they had to beat out to land David Sanders to go against Ohio State and Georgia, Nebraska. Before that, Clemson and Alabama and some others. And go into a neighboring state to get a guy like David Sanders who didn't previously have any direct ties to Tennessee. I think it sends a message about what's possible for Tennessee in recruiting. They've really stepped it up in the 2025 class especially. And now to have Lance Hurd, the LSU transfer, former five-star prospect, to pair with David Sanders potentially as early as next year in the starting lineup, that's a big deal for Tennessee and really could solidify their offensive outlook for the future.
So, Blair, everyone in Knoxville knows about their new lineman, but what about their new linebacker? A day after the Sanders commitment, the Vols flip top 247 Jaden Harmon from Alabama. Now, that in itself will make fans happy, but what else about this prospect should Tennessee get excited about?
Tremendous ball skills and also a defender who consistently finds ways to get into the backfield. Emily, he attacks gaps, he can speed rush off the edge, and that's a combo that should continue to help shore up Tennessee's defensive renaissance.
All right, elsewhere in large human news, five-star edge Iose Epinesa committing to Iowa. He becomes the signature piece to the Hawkeyes' 51st ranked class. So what do we need to know about him?
He is the brother of Buffalo Bills star pass rusher A.J. Epinesa, who was a two-time All-Big Ten selection at Iowa and a second-round NFL draft pick 4 years ago. Iose is a terrific multi-sport athlete with immense potential as a three-down lineman. And the Hawkeyes, their fans, they certainly are used to having an Epinesa making plays on Saturdays.
Certainly seen it before and hope to see it again. Miami, meanwhile, continuing to build its top 10 class and adding safety Bryce Fitzgerald certainly helps that mission. The Miami native is the 18th ranked safety in this class. But Blair, what makes him ready for the next level?
High awareness, high IQ, whatever we want to call it, Fitzgerald flashes instincts that are off the charts. He has 15 interceptions over the last 2 seasons, also a basketball state title to his name, and competes in track and field events. He's part of a loaded DB class for the Canes, and Fitzgerald is second as and seasoned as any guy in that team to be able to see the field from day one.
All right, we have more from Miami with Gaby Urrutia in just minutes. But first, we got a flip alert to tell you about. Top 247 corner Cade Phillips flipping his commitment from Texas to LSU. Some SEC on SEC crime. Who'd the Tigers just add?
A long defensive back with incredible upside. +4 wingspan on Cade Phillips. He can be position versatile. He's a home run hitter on the defensive side of the ball. A terrific pickup.
Time now to go around the country to get the latest recruiting intel. You will hear from national recruiting analysts Tom Loy, Brian Doan, and our own Blair Angulo. Here's Tom to start off the recruiting roundup.
Thanks, Emily. Let's start with Flowood, Mississippi, Hartfield Academy top 100 safety Braylon Womack. This is 24/7 Sports #1 safety in the class of 2026. Over the weekend, he trimmed his list to 10 finalists, but I want to take it a step further and look at 5 to keep an eye on. You got Ohio State, Alabama, Texas, Texas A&M, and Notre Dame. In fact, I would actually put them in that order 1 through 5 as it stands today. I think the Buckeyes are doing a phenomenal job. Crimson Tide are very much in play. He had a great visit to both Texas schools. And although my 24/7 Sports crystal ball is on Notre Dame, I just don't feel as confident as when he once named them his public leader. Now let's wrap it up with Lewisville, Texas, 5-star offensive tackle Michael Fasusi. His commitment is days away. He'll announce his pledge on August 21st. The finalists include Florida, Texas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Oregon. For quite some time, the crystal ball was favoring the Texas Longhorns, But in the end, we think relationships matter more than anything to Fasusi, and he does not have a better relationship across the country than he does with Oklahoma offensive line coach Bill Bedenbaugh. In fact, Jordan Scruggs, Hank South, and I have all changed our crystal ball picks to Oklahoma. We think the Sooners get this one done on August 21st. Now let's hear from national analyst Brian Doan.
Thank you so much, Tom. And from there, we are going to head to North Atlanta High School in Atlanta. Top 247 defensive lineman Chase Linton. He decommitted from Rutgers on Saturday. Georgia is the school to really track on this one. Ohio State is also involved. Some quick background. Linton committed to Rutgers at the end of an official visit in early June. At the time, it looked like a huge coup for the Scarlet Knights, a talented kid. He then moved into the top 247. Georgia had him on campus before his visit to Rutgers. He did not get to finish his workout. The Bulldogs remained adamant about getting him back on campus before offering him. That took place in July. At the end, there was that week period where prospects could be on campus. He worked out for the Bulldogs. He picked up an offer. He was also back at Rutgers in late July to get another look at the program there. It only seemed like a matter of time before he was going to decommit. Of course, things are tracking Georgia's way. Just look at the crystal ball for that. But Ohio State is also involved in this one. And one thing I've learned over the years about the Buckeyes, when Larry Johnson's the D-line coach, defensive linemen pay close attention to that. So that is something also to keep an eye on. Right now, though, I think things are trending for the Bulldogs. And from there, let's go out west to Blair.
Thanks, Brian. I was in the Salt Lake City area last week to take in the beginning and the start of the high school football season, where I got to see five-star wide receiver Jerome Myles. He kicked off his senior season in a big way. 4 receptions, 120 receiving yards, including an 80-yard score, and he had a touchdown that was very electric and obviously a big reason why a lot of the programs are pursuing his signature. He has also narrowed his recruitment to a select few. He has 5 schools at the top of his list. It's Georgia, Ohio State, Texas A&M, USC, and Utah. And there is a commitment date as well. I reported earlier today that Jerome Myles intends to commit on October 30th, and that's when he will be holding his announcement there in the Salt Lake City area. I think 2 teams are out in front here. I think it's the Buckeyes and I think it's the Utes battling it out for one of the best playmakers in America. With Ohio State, it's obviously a big thing there with Coach Hartline and what they do at wide receiver. He hasn't been able to get there yet. They are trying to plan out an official visit for a night game. It's difficult for a West Coast prospect to make it out there on a Saturday for a daytime kickoff. So look out for that in the coming weeks for Jerome Myles to potentially plan out a trip to Columbus. And then the Utes are obviously a big contender as well. His former teammate Isaac Wilson being in the quarterback room provides them with a lot of familiarity, and I think he really likes the hometown Utes here down the stretch. Staying in the Salt Lake City area, Austin Peay was another player I got a chance to catch up with at Lone Peak High School before they boarded the buses for their initial game at Bingham. He took official visits in the offseason to Arkansas, BYU, NC State, and Oregon. There are a number of other schools still in contention to get an official during the season. It's Oklahoma, Auburn, A&M, and Utah. He's in no real rush. He wants to make a decision later this year, possibly after the season, maybe narrow his recruiting focus at the midway point of the fall. But right now, I think these are the programs that are jostling for position for Austin Peay, one of the top available offensive linemen out west.
Whew. Just heard Blair say it. High school season off and running, which means you're going to want to keep it locked into 247sports.com. Our team of recruiting experts and analysts have you covered on all the latest news. Check it out at 247sports.com. Fresh off a top 5 class in 2024, the Hurricanes are feeling as hot as the temps in South Florida. This round off to a slightly slower start, still sitting in the top 10 at number 9. 8 players from the top 247, good by most team standards, but expectations, as we know, are always higher at the U. So let's talk about the state of Miami with Gaby Urrutia of Inside the U. Gaby, we got to ask you about the most immediate news, which is what we talked about at the top of the show. Landing safety Bryce Fitzgerald over the weekend. What does he add to this class?
Yeah, Bryce Fitzgerald is a ball hawk and safety player. You mentioned it, 15 interceptions over the last 2 years, led Miami Belen Jesuit to a state title as a basketball player. He's just a big-time athlete. He's a guy that just finds the football. He can potentially play corner at Miami. He has the ability to play high safety. So Miami's really excited about adding Bryce Fitzgerald. They had to beat Florida State to get him. So getting him on board is a really big deal, just getting a local guy like that from right down the road.
Gaby, that was big news, but there's obviously been some other big news this offseason. We want to congratulate you on the new addition to the family. We had visit season, we had commitment season. Now it's going to be flip season, so there's no real time to rest, I would suppose, but I hope you are getting some rest when you can. Micah Newton, he flipped from NC State to Miami. He is going to stay in the Sunshine State. What was your reaction to that news?
Yeah, a guy that Miami kind of evaluated after official visit season, a guy that I think they always liked, but, extended that offer as they kind of sorted through their defensive line board. Again, a guy in state who's played a lot off the edge, but someone who Miami thinks can kick inside and potentially develop into a high motor defensive tackle. I think Miami's just betting on a lot of the traits that he has. Again, starting with that motor. He doesn't turn 18 until next summer, so he'll be 6 months into college before he even turns 18. So a lot of developmental upside there with Micah Newton, and Miami loves what they could potentially get from him as a versatile guy who, again, could play on the inside or potentially kick on the outside and rush the quarterback from that edge.
Speaking of flips, you have a great story up right now at InsideTheU.com about Georgia wide receiver commit Tyler Williams, how he is, quote, still keeping an eye on the Canes. So what's the latest there?
Yeah, Miami's looking to add pass catchers. They had a really productive year from the position between Jacoby George and Xavier Restrepo last year, even Colby Young, who transferred to Georgia in the offseason. Miami is expecting to throw the ball a lot in Shannon Dawson's air raid system. And Tyler Williams is a guy that Miami still really values. He's at Sefner Armwood now. They were down in Dade County. Really handled Miami Norland at the historic Traz Powell here. They beat him 51-20. So a big win. Tyler Williams had a lot to say about that with a long touchdown and a long kick return before being sort of shut down. But, he's a big guy that the Hurricanes have been after for a long time. They thought that they were really close to getting him this summer. Ultimately, he chose Georgia, but Miami's still coming after him really hard. So he's definitely going to give him a look. Kind of assured me that he was going to be at a Miami game or two this season, and also mentioned Auburn and UCF as schools that are still persistently pursuing him. So I would keep an eye on those two as well.
Miami is trying to make it 6 straight cycles of signing at least one top 24/7 running back. We know that the SEC is making a real charge for Canes running back commit Gerard Pringle Jr. What's the pulse on that recruitment, Gaby, as we head into the season?
Yeah, I think Gerard Pringle's totally locked in. Before getting to Miami or being hired by Miami, Matt Merritt was a running backs coach at USF. And before Gerard Pringle emerged as a national recruit, Gerard Pringle was Matt Merritt's top running back target at USF. So that relationship was long-standing. And again, as Matt Merritt, transitioned to Miami to take over the running backs coach there, Gerard Pringle was the first call he made. Again, he kind of started emerging as a big-time running back with Georgia, Alabama, Florida, a bunch of the national guys coming around on Pringle. But I think that long-standing relationship with Matt Merritt and Gerard Pringle ultimately helped the Hurricanes kind of seal the deal here. And I don't envision a scenario where Pringle's not in Miami's class at the end of the day.
Sure, Miami fans happy to hear that after watching some of those highlights. I can see why those other schools are swarming. Gaby, we want to pop up something that you posted on X recently just to get a little bit of clarity here. So this is a tweet from Front Office Sports talking about John Ruiz and his company Life Wallet, saying that there's substantial doubt that the company can continue operating. There's, of course, been a lot of confusion as far as his involvement. That was part of something that you tweeted earlier, saying that a reminder he has little to no involvement in Miami's NIL space. So what can you update us in terms of how the situation with Life Wallet and that company potentially affects what's happening with Miami's booster situation and NIL?
Yeah, I think, matter of factly, it doesn't. It has basically nothing to do with what Miami's doing. I think John Ruiz initially, at the onset of the NIL era, obviously became a big figure in the space, and for a point, he was someone who was heavily backing Miami athletics. But, I would say for over the past year, John Ruiz, again, has had little to no involvement. Everything with Miami has been going through Canes Connection. They've done an extraordinary job keeping Miami competitive. Miami just signed a top 5 class with, again, no involvement from John Ruiz at all. So, John Ruiz is dealing with all that stuff on his end. But again, I don't think that this impacts Miami in any way, shape, or form. They're in very, very good hands. Canes Connection does an excellent job. And I think they're one of the prime collectives in all of the college football space. So again, I think, as far as that, the John Ruiz and the misconception, just because of how much he is tied to Miami and tied to the logo, but really there's just really no connection at all. I would say, again, it's been over a year since there's been any sort of bond there.
Yeah, certainly whatever's happening, it is working as Miami is hot on the trail right now. Gaby, thank you for taking a moment for us. We know 2 under 2 and a 1-month-old right now must be tough, but yeah. Congratulations again, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, guys.
We appreciate it. Despite
Absolutely.
I'd say spotty sleep that he's getting right now, he is still keeping you up to date on everything that's happening. So check out his work on InsideTheU.com. Also, you can see the latest episode of their podcast, Through the Smoke, plus everything you need to know about fall camp, latest on the trail. I'm telling you, Inside the U's got you covered. Let's refresh you on the top 10 teams in the recruiting rankings. Ohio State, the top team in the land. Behind them, it's Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Auburn, rounding out that top 5. Then you've got the Red Hot Vols, Aggies, Irish, Canes, and Ducks, all as top 10 teams. For this next segment, we're going to welcome in our friend Bud Elliott of the Cover 3 podcast. We're playing a little game of panic or patience. So we're going to look at some teams that are maybe underperforming, and you're going to tell us if we should panic or maybe pump the brakes a little bit. It is August, after all. We have some time until signing day. So let's go ahead and start with Notre Dame. They're a team we talked a lot about coming out of spring, right? They were the number 1 team in the nation for many, many months. Now they've dropped down to number 8. So what do you make of Notre Dame? Panic or patience?
Emily, it's a great question. I'm going to go with cautious panic, but a little more patience, I guess, if I have to. I personally expect them to lose Deuce Knight to Auburn maybe by the end of the month. That's just what my Auburn people think will happen. And yet, if it was almost any other program in the country, I think that would be a full-on panic situation because Deuce Knight truly is a special upside talent. But yet, Notre Dame has recruited so well at the quarterback position that I do not think a full-on panic is justified. In fact, I think C.J. Carr is very likely to be the starter for the Irish next year. They've done a really good job at this position. Marcus Freeman is a good recruiter. I love both coordinators they have. Now, if you're a Notre Dame fan, you're like, man, are we going to make the jump and get to that national title level? Then I get it. But this is a program on quite stable footing. And I think a lot of that is because they recruit offensive line quite well and they recruit quarterback extremely well, even with the potential loss of Deuce Knight.
They have a very deep quarterback room and also have had a lot of success in the portal. So that makes sense. A little bit of patience, but there's some panic there as well. Let's go to North Carolina. They're ranked 50th in the country right now, which was a bit of a surprise to me. You usually see them kind of in the top half of the rankings, maybe top 30, top 25 team. But especially looking at last year's class, they had 33 commitments, only 14 in this year's class. So what do you say, panic or patience?
Look, if North Carolina's administration is going to be this patient with Mack Brown, I think the fans have to adopt the patient approach as well, right? Mack Brown spoke at ACC Media Day how all these other coaches say that he's going to retire in order to negatively recruit the Tar Heels. And, if I'm negatively recruiting Tar Heels, I'm probably saying they kind of wasted Drake May and they kind of wasted, Sam Howell. But look, Mack Brown's still a good recruiter. North Carolina, luckily this year, has a schedule that could allow for a really soft landing after losing Drake May. I mean, they're 7.5 over/under win total. This schedule is a cakewalk. So they go out there, they win 8-9 ball games. Mack Brown's able to say, hey, it wasn't all just Drake May. We're a good football team. I think they'll get some more commits in the boat. So if they're going to be patient with Mack, I'm going patience.
All right, elsewhere in the Carolinas, I want to highlight South Carolina. They're at number 31 right now, which is honestly where they've been landing under Shane Beamer. But if you dig into this class, though, I don't know if he's a victim of his own success, Bud, but you land a 5-star in each of the last 2 classes. So maybe that's the expectation. But what do we say here, panic or patience with South Carolina?
I'm going to go with patience here as well, Emily. This is really kind of a proof of concept year for Shane Beamer. It's an all-important year. This team is now basically fully his. It's all guys that he recruited. I do think South Carolina has a couple things going for them. They're very close to making a bowl if you look at the preseason odds. they're going to be playing multiple true freshmen in the lineup, and their quarterback, Lenora Sellers, is a guy who Beamer recruited. So if the guys he recruited are actually good, he's going to get to say, hey, look, if you come here and you're good, I'm going to play you early and we're going to win. And if they don't, then guess what? Shane Beamer's going to be probably number 1 or number 2 on the 2025 hot seat list. So let's use some patience. Let's see how the season plays out. If the season's crappy, then, the recruiting class probably will be too.
All right, speaking of hot seat, none hotter than that of Billy Napier's. So let's go to Florida. They're one class above South Carolina right now, coming in at number 30, which I know is a bit of a jump scare to Gators fans out there. They're used to those top 10 classes. They had a top 15 class the last 2 cycles, so panic or patience with Florida?
It's a little bit of panic because the only guys jumping in the boat right now for UF seem to be Gator legacies, right? Vernell Brown, Ben Hanks. Those are guys who I think would have gone to Florida at any point in the last 40 years because of the strong family connections that they have to the school. But ultimately, with Florida's season win total in Vegas being 4.5, that's a little bit concerning because I'm not really sure what else they can do to build momentum for the season, with the exception of win ball games. You got to go out there and win. You got to make sure you have 11 men on the field, not 10, not 12, not 13. So if they get the right number of guys on the field for Florida, maybe they make a bowl. And then Florida's one of the weird teams this year. It's like, hey, if they make a bowl, they can sell that as overachieving preseason expectations. They can sell that as, hey, come here and play with DJ Lagway and a lot of the young talent that we've amassed in these prior recruiting classes. So the problem is they have to go out and do it. And I've never seen a 4.5 Vegas win total for the Florida Gators in my lifetime. So they're going to have to overachieve a lot just to make a bowl. And patience is hard there.
All right, speaking of a team that would like to make a bowl game, let's finish on Colorado. They're 82nd in the country right now, which I don't think scares as many people as Florida being a just top 30 team right now. We know what Colorado wants to do, right? Deion Sanders wants to recruit in the portal. So it's easy to say, we don't really care all that much about what they're doing on the recruiting trail. But even in past cycles, Bud, they've landed that gem, right? That Jordan Seaton from last year. So what do we say with Colorado? Panic or patience?
I think it's patience, right? If you like the approach Coach Prime has taken so far, why would you deviate from that support now? They have a chance to make a bowl this year. I think they probably will, as long as they can stay healthy and keep things together. And they're going to lose quite a bit off this football team, including Shador and Travis and Shiloh and those guys. So they're probably going to have to go pretty heavily portal again. And I just don't know if Coach Prime cares about recruiting high school. It's been well publicized out there. He does very few, if any, in-home visits, and it's a very unconventional approach. But so far, Colorado's selling a lot of tickets. Their fans seem to be happy. Might as well be being patient.
All right, I got to ask a quick follow-up, though, because with a lot of these teams, right, we look at patience as, well, maybe it could get better, right? You said with Florida, if the results are there, then their class could be there. But with Colorado, is it patience and saying that this class could get better? Or, as you've said, we not really, don't care all that much whether or not it gets better?
Yeah, I think you're worried if you are underachieving a goal. And if the goal is recruit high school well, then you're freaked out. You're panicking like crazy. But there's no evidence that Colorado actually cares about recruiting high school well, at least not at medium or high volume. Now, maybe they can land a Juju Lewis if they go out and have a nice season. There's certainly not an heir apparent quarterback waiting in the wings there. But if Shador has a nice season and gets drafted highly, my guess here is that they're probably going to be pretty high on the list for several quality portal quarterback targets. So I just don't think it's worth freaking out over, because Colorado and Deion clearly don't care about trying. Otherwise, they would put more effort in to do so.
All right. Thank you, Bud. Hey, if you're panicking about not being ready for the season that kicks off this week, the Cover 3 pod with Bud Elliott, Chip Patterson, Tom Fornelli, and Danny Cannell have you covered. Also, Bud just wrapped up his summer school series, and there are so many of them. So there's a very good chance that he has your school covered. So go check it out. All right, Blair is back here with us because we want to show a fun clip on the theme. I'm not saying it's the theme for today's show, but it's obviously big news that happened over the weekend with David Sanders committing to the Vols. And there are some other commits that have something they would like to say to one David Sanders. Let's check it out.
Hey, let's go, Big Dave. Congrats. Very fired up. Can't wait to ball out with you. Welcome to the family. Let's turn up Knoxville. GBO.
Yo, Big Dave, it's George here. Just want to congratulate you on committing to the Vols. Could be more excited that you're my blind side. And let's get it going. Go Vols, baby.
So you've got two top-ranked quarterbacks saying welcome to their top-ranked, the number one offensive tackle in the country. So how big a deal is all this recruiting success and momentum for Tennessee right now?
It's huge. I need a little bit more excitement, though, from our guy, George McIntyre. You know, he's saying he's excited, but yeah, it looked beautiful. Listen, I think the big thing for Tennessee is that they have really followed through on everything that we maybe imagined. I think 3 years ago we wondered what would Tennessee recruiting look like under Josh Heupel. We knew that he was a great mind of football, and he could really obviously put a lot of points together and light up the scoreboard like he did at UCF. But we always questioned whether he was ready to embark on some of these recruiting battles against the blue blood programs, and more often than not, I think he's emerging as a real big time recruiter. So to have a pair of other quarterbacks like George McIntyre, like Brandon, the number one player in that 26 class, doing what they're doing and spreading that message and helping out the program to land a 5-star like David Sanders, I think it signifies and it shows that the Vols are here to stay as a recruiting power.
Yeah, you said it. With Josh Heupel coming in from UCF, it was, his scheme is going to be fun as heck to watch, right? But can he get it done on the recruiting trail? I think him coming to Tennessee at the same time that NIL was becoming a big thing too, just the confluence of that with the success that they've had from their collective. Certainly things are looking up for Tennessee, and that was a fun little video for this Knoxville native to watch. I'm not going to lie here and tell you that was not a good weekend. So thank you to our Tom Loy for getting that video for us. We all appreciate it, not just me. Blair, you're going to be hitting the road this week. I'm curious where you're headed, because last week you were in Salt Lake, and you're just all over the place this time of year.
I get to stay home in Orange County out here in California, Emily. Thankfully enough, I get to sleep in my own bed this week. But Thursday is a huge matchup. It's Husan Longstreet and Centennial High School from Corona, the 5-star quarterback who's committed to A&M. He will be facing a modern day program that might be the most loaded high school team in recent memory. You think about some of the players that are committed there, and you see it on the screen. It's really highlighted by 5-star wide receiver Chris Henry. He's headed to Ohio State. He's committed there. There are schools like Oregon and Texas still pushing hard for him. You have tight end Mark Bowman, a top 5 player nationally in the recently released top 100 for the 27 class. He's already drawing comparisons to Brock Bowers. The offense is loaded. You got a quarterback who's going to Washington in Dash Bailey. You have a running back who's going to Oregon in Jordan Davison. You have a receiver in Marcus Harris who is headed to Oklahoma on defense. A pair of players going to Alabama. A corner going to Penn State, an edge rusher going to Oregon. The 26 class is ultra loaded. Usually we go to these high school games and we pick out one player. I mentioned Jerome, Myles, and a couple others that were at Corner Canyon. If you go to a modern day game, you can look at any inch of the football field and find a future college star. So I'm really excited to see that matchup. I'll also be checking out Sierra Canyon against Jay Serra later this week. I know our guy Greg Biggins will be at Santa Margarita versus Mission Viejo. So the high school football season in full swing in Southern California, one of the most talent-rich areas in the country.
That's crazy. That's why I was saying you don't have to always hit the road to go see talent. You have a lot of it in your own backyard. That's insane. I was going to follow up and ask you who you're keeping your eye on, but the answer is everyone. So looking forward.
Yeah, everyone,
to
and I think the cool thing will be some of the matchups.
Yeah.
Utah has a wide receiver commit on Centennial sideline, Tavian McNair, and so whether he lines up on the right side or the left side, he's going to be facing off against a Power 4 conference opponent, and also he's going to have a Power 4 conference quarterback throwing him the football. So the evaluations are key there, and we get to see a lot of talent. Modern day loaded as anyone. They probably have a 2 deep. Maybe they're 3 deep in some positions. It's an insanely loaded roster.
We'll bring a fresh new notebook because I have a feeling that you will be filling that thing up, and we look forward to hearing all about it. Thank you so much, and thank you for watching us today. We appreciate it. Once again, make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure that you hit that like button, all the good things. We appreciate it. For Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.